September 1st, 1939. 4:45 a.m. West of Blad, Poland. The sky is still dark when the first shells land. They arrive without warning, howling out of the Baltic mist, slamming into concrete and earth with a violence that feels personal. The German battleship Schleswig-Holstein, anchored peacefully in the harbor just hours before, opens fire point blank. Each blast shakes the ground beneath the Polish defenders' boots. Windows shatter, birds explode into the air. The war announces itself in thunder. You can almost feel the cold in your lungs as soldiers scramble to their positions. Rifles clatter. Orders are shouted, then drowned out by explosions. Somewhere, a watch stops ticking. This is not a border skirmish. This is not diplomacy by other means. This is annihilation set in motion. Within minutes, German Stuka dive bombers scream overhead, their sirens turning the air itself into a weapon. Roads clogged with refugees, families hauling cots, children clutching blankets while columns of panzer tanks cut past them like steel rivers, unstoppable and precise. The strategy has a name: Blitzkrieg, lightning war, speed, shock, coordination, infantry, armor, air power, moving as one. Poland doesn't fall because it fights poorly, it falls because it is struck by a form of warfare the world has never seen unleashed at this scale. By the time Britain and France declare war 2 days later, Europe is already bleeding. But on the Western Front, something strange happens. Nothing. Troops sit behind the massive concrete teeth of the Maginot Line, staring east into forests and fog. British soldiers arrive with crisp uniforms and outdated assumptions. They dig in, they wait, they listen. This uneasy calm becomes known as the phony Wara pause, so surreal it feels like the continent itself is holding its breath. Meanwhile, Adolf Hitler is watching closely. In Berlin, he studies maps late into the night. He is not just gambling on military success, he is betting everything on speed and fear. He believes democracies are slow, hesitant, fractured. He believes they will collapse if struck hard enough, fast enough. So he strikes again. May 10th, 1940. Dawn. German forces surge west, not through the heavily fortified French border, but through the Ardennes forest terrain French planners considered impassable for tanks. Panzer divisions burst out of the trees like predators, crossing the Meuse River under fire, punching a hole straight through Allied lines. French command collapses into confusion. British units are cut off. Radios crackle with fragmented orders that arrive too late to matter. You can feel the panic now. Vehicles abandoned on roads. Officers shouting for units that no longer exist. Civilians flooding every route of escape. Above it all, German aircraft dominate the sky. Within weeks, Paris falls. The image shocks the world. German troops marching beneath the Arc de Triomphe. France, victor of the First World War, defeated in 6 weeks. Across the Channel, Britain stands alone, and Hitler turns his gaze westward. July 1940. The Battle of Britain begins. It is not tanks this time, but pilots, young men climbing into cockpits with sweat on their hands and fear behind their bravado. The Luftwaffe comes in waves. Hundreds of bombers escorted by fighters, aiming to crush Britain's air defenses and force surrender from the sky. Radar stations hum. Phones ring. RAF squadrons scramble again and again, climbing into above fields and cities. You can almost smell the oil and cordite. Hear the staccato chatter of machine guns as planes tear past each other at impossible speeds. London burns at night. But Britain does not break. Against expectations, against Hitler's own assumptions, the Royal Air Force holds. Losses mount on both sides, but Germany cannot achieve air superiority. In September, the invasion plans are quietly shelved. It is the first crack in the myth of Nazi invincibility. Hitler responds, the way he always does, by escalating. If Britain won't fall, he will starve it. Submarines prowl the Atlantic, sinking merchant ships faster than they can be replaced. At the same time, his ambitions shift eastward toward a prize he has wanted all along: the Soviet Union. June 22nd. And 1941. Before sunrise, 3 million German soldiers crossed the border in the largest invasion in human history. Operation Barbarossa explodes across thousands of miles. Entire Soviet armies are encircled and destroyed. Cities fall. Millions are captured. It seems, once again, that Hitler's instincts are right, that speed and brutality will carry the day. But the distances are vast. The resistance is ferocious. And winter is coming. As German troops push deeper into the Soviet Union, supply lines stretch thin. Engines seize in the cold. Men freeze in their trenches. The war that was supposed to end in months grinds into something else entirely. A war of attrition. And for the first time, the German war machine begins to slow. The European theater has been ignited from the beaches of the Baltic to the skies over London, from the forests of France to the frozen plains of the East. But the most decisive battles are still ahead, and the question now hangs over the continent, unanswered and dangerous. Has Hitler already reached too far? December 5, 1941. Outside Moscow, -20 degrees Fahrenheit. The German soldier can no longer feel his feet. He stamps them anyway, again and again, hoping pain will remind him they're still there. His greatcoat is stiff with ice. His rifle bolt freezes mid-sacco around him. Engines cough and die. Abandoned tanks half buried in snow, like steel carcasses. This is not the war they were promised. Just months earlier, these same men had marched east in summer uniforms, convinced the Soviet Union would collapse before winter. They had smashed through armies, captured cities, taken millions of prisoners. Victory had felt inevitable. Now, the snow is waist-deep, and the Red Army is coming. You could almost hear it before you see it, the rumble of artillery rolling through the frozen air, the shrill whistle of Katyusha rockets screaming down from the sky. Soviet counterattacks slam into exhausted German lines, pushing them back mile by mile. For the first time in the war, the Wehrmacht is not advancing, it is retreating. Moscow holds, and with that failure, something fundamental shifts in Berlin. Adolf Hitler refuses to accept reality. He forbids retreats, orders units to stand fast no matter the cost. Generals argue. Maps are redrawn in desperation. Blame circulates, but solutions do not. The illusion of unstoppable momentum is gone. And then, in the West, another blow lands. December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor. Within days, the United States is at war not just with Japan, but with Germany itself. Hitler declares it personally, confident that America is unprepared, divided, too far away to matter. He underestimates the scale of what he has awakened. Across the Atlantic, factories roar to life. Ships slide into the water faster than a boat can sink them. Planes roll off assembly lines by the tens of thousands. American soldiers begin arriving in Britain, awkward, loud, inexperienced, but endless. The European war has become global. In 1942, Germany still appears dominant on maps. Its territory stretches from the Arctic Circle to North Africa, from the Atlantic coast to the gates of Stalingrad, but dominance on paper hides growing fractures. On the Eastern Front, the war devours men and machines at a scale never seen before. Entire divisions vanish in weeks. Cities are reduced to rubble, then fought over street by street. And none matters more than one name. Stalingrad. By late summer 1942, German forces reach the Volga River. Hitler orders the city taken at all costs, not for its strategic value alone, but for its name. It is personal now. The fighting is hellish. Factories become fortresses. Stairwells turn into killing zones. Snipers stalk ruins where rats feast on the dead. You could almost smell the smoke and decay. Hear the screams echo through shattered concrete. The Germans take most of the city and then the trap closes. In November, Soviet forces launch a massive counter-offensive not against the city itself, but against the weaker Axis flanks guarding it. Romanian units collapse. Encirclement tightens. An entire German army, the 60s, surrounded. Hitler promises air resupply. It never comes. By February 1943, the survivors are starving, freezing, surrendering in groups. Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus lays down his weapons, something no German Field Marshal has ever done. Stalingrad is not just a defeat, it is a psychological catastrophe. For the first time, the world sees the German army utterly destroyed. The myth of invincibility shatters in the snow and rubble of a ruined city. From that moment on, the question is no longer if Germany can be beaten, it's how long it will take. In the skies over Europe, the pressure mounts. British and American bombers begin round the clock. Raids RAF by night, USAAF by day. Cities like Hamburg, Essen, and Berlin itself burn beneath waves of explosives. Civilian morale cracks. Industrial output suffers. German fighters rise to meet the bombers again and again, but losses are heavy and pilots are irreplaceable on the ground. The Allies begin to close in from the south. North Africa. British forces, under Bernard Montgomery, face off against Germany's most celebrated commander, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. The Desert Fox. Tank battles rage across sand and rock, supply lines stretching thin in the heat. At El Alamein, the tide turns. Rommel is pushed back. Then, In November 1942, American and British troops land in Morocco and Algeria. Germany is squeezed. By May 1943, Axis forces in North Africa surrender en masse. Hundreds of thousands of prisoners march into captivity. It is another front, lost. Another door closed. Hitler now fights a war on multiple fronts, against enemies whose strength only grows with time. His responses become more rigid, more ideological, less strategic. He demands total war. Germany gives it, but the cost is unbearable. Factories are bombed, cities are flattened, young boys and old men are drafted. The regime tightens its grip even as its options shrink, and across the Channel, something else is forming. In southern England, armies gather. Landing craft crowd harbors. Airfields overflow. With planes, soldiers train endlessly for a single day that everyone knows is coming. The return to Europe. The war has turned, and the Reich, though still dangerous, is bleeding from wounds it can no longer heal. The final reckoning is approaching, but it will not come. June 1st, 1944. The coast of southern England. Early morning fog hangs low over the Thames estuary. You can almost taste the salt in the air, heavy and metallic, carried on a chill wind. Landing craft rock gently in the tide, tied to wooden piers. Soldiers huddle in the mist, boots soaked from wading through mud the night before, rifles slung awkwardly over shoulders. Every man is silent, some praying, some staring blankly, some trying to imagine the impossible. What it will be like to step onto a beach defended by an enemy who knows every inch of it. Among them walks Lieutenant Colonel James Ryan, barely eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of what's coming. He checks the map again, folds it carefully, then tucks it back into his jacket. There is no way to prepare for this fully. There never is. The beaches of Normandy are quiet now, almost peaceful. Too peaceful. It is the eerie silence that makes the men nervous. Somewhere, far inland, German troops sleep, drill, or prepare. Somewhere, bunkers bristled with machine guns and artillery. Somewhere, officers argue over reports and troop movements, unaware that the largest invasion in human history is about to smash into them. In the skies above, reconnaissance planes hum, faintly, surveying the beaches, counting obstacles, noting German foot. The data will guide the men below, but it cannot protect them from bullets, mines, or the chaos that will ensue. And then there is General Dwight D. Eisenhower, in his command post in Portsmouth, staring at the final weather reports, a cigarette dangling from his lips. The men under his command are already in the water, rehearsing final drills, checking equipment, calming each other. Eisenhower knows the stakes. The entire war in Western Europe may hinge on the outcome of these first hours. If anything goes wrong, it is my responsibility. If we fail, it will be remembered forever. He whispers, almost to himself, the weight of command pressing down like a stone. Meanwhile, across the Channel, the Germans sit in their reinforced positions. The 352nd Infantry Division at Omaha, the 21st Panzer Division inland, the coastal artillery batteries know exactly when the invasion will come, only that it will. They are alert, disciplined, professional, but also human. Nervousness shows in the tight grips of hands-on rifles, in soldiers peering over concrete parapets, in the whispered rumors of officers fearing an assault of unprecedented scale. The Allies have tried deception, spreading false intelligence, simulating landings elsewhere. But the Germans have fortified Normandy heavily, expecting a strike at any moment. Every sand dune, every hedgerow, every stone wall could conceal deadly fire. At Gold Beach, British troops line up along landing craft, checking harnesses, tightening straps, whispering prayers. At Utah Beach, Americans are rehearsing embarkation, reviewing signals, planning to move inland immediately upon hitting sand. At Omaha, the youngest soldiers of the 29th Infantry Division tried to steel themselves for what they cannot imagine. The tension is palpable. Every heart beats faster than normal. Sweat mixes with salt spray. Mud and diesel fill lungs. Every man knows the first wave will decide everything. Success or failure, life or death, victory or defeat. A faint rumble grows in the distance. Ships shift, propellers churn water, and somewhere far away, planes release their engines into the sky. The invasion fleet stretches for miles, a silver and gray armada awaiting the order that will send it into history. Some soldiers glance at their comrades, trying to gauge fear, courage, determination. Every face tells the same story. This is the moment they have trained for. Yet nothing could have prepared them for the reality about to unfold. And then, across the channel, the first bombs drop. It is not the invasion yet. It is only the start, the prelude. But already, the world knows nothing will ever be the same. The quiet, the fog, the waiting it, is about to be shattered by a storm of fire and steel. For the men on the beaches, the calm will end soon. For Eisenhower, the stakes are clear. For the Germans, what seemed routine will erupt into chaos, and somewhere in the mist, soldiers grip rifles, tighten bayonets, and whisper, "We go at dawn." The die is cast. June 6, 1944, 6:30 hours. Omaha Beach, Normandy. The cold water bites at the ankles, then knees, then thighs. You can almost feel it, the surf pushing and pulling, icy and unrelenting, as soldiers climb down the ramps of Higgins boats into chaos. The horizon, once a distant line of gray, is now jagged with smoke, trace of fire, and the screaming echoes of artillery. Lieutenant Colonel James Ryan wades through the surf, boots heavy with water, rifle clutched to his chest. Around him, men fall, some silently, some screaming. The German machine guns at Whitestan's Nest 62 have registered every landing craft, every likely exit point. Nothing surprises them. Nothing is accidental. Bullets rip through the water, tearing at men like a relentless predator. Corporal Thomas O'Reilly, barely 19, trips over a steel hedgehog, buried in sand, twisting his ankle. His sergeant yells over the din, pointing toward a gap in the obstacles. Every step forward is a negotiation with death. Every breath is borrowed. Yet, somehow, small groups begin to move. Crawling first, then running, then charging. And then comes the first moment that will define D-Day at Omaha. Brigadier General Norman Coda emerges from a landing craft, unscathed, upright, commanding, 51 years old, with a cane tucked under his arm. He doesn't duck. He doesn't flinch. He moves along the sand, rallying men with a voice that cuts through the hellish roar. "Rangers, lead the way," he shouts. A phrase that will echo in American military history. A phrase born not from ceremony, but from necessity, from the grit of a man who refuses to allow panic to dictate fate. Soldiers rally around him, following not orders, but courage. Inland, German defenders watch the chaos, astonished. Machine gunner Heinrich Sevel fires continuously, believing the beach will break under American casualties. But the Americans keep coming, wave after wave. Some fall, some die, but others climb over obstacles, dash through gaps, improvise attacks. The beach that should have been a death trap begins to crack. Meanwhile, at Utah Beach, Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr., 56, with a cane and a heart condition, lands miles off his intended target. The first wave is scattered, but Roosevelt, under fire, surveys the new landscape. He walks among his men, personally reconnoitering paths inland, redirecting units, ensuring momentum is not lost. "We start the war from right here," he announces, and that is exactly what they do everywhere. Small acts of initiative define survival. A private uses a Bangalore torpedo to blast wire. A lieutenant climbs atop a sand dune, waving men forward. A sergeant organizes wounded into cover. Doctrine dies. On the beach, human will takes over. Improvisation becomes strategy. The first hour is the worst. Casualties mount. Smoke and salt mix in the air. Landing craft burn. Soldiers scream for medics who cannot reach them. And yet, through sheer persistence, small groups begin to secure footholds. Each yard gained is a triumph against the most fortified coastal defense in history. At sea, Rear Admirals John Hall and Carlton Bryant maneuver destroyers into dangerously shallow waters, risking running aground to provide artillery support. Guns roar, targeting German bunkers, suppressing enemy fire just enough to allow the infantry to advance. Every salvo is calculated, precise, desperate, and while chaos reigns, there is also a strange, terrible rhythm. Men rise, fall, rally, move, and die in waves, carrying the tide of battle forward. By mid-morning, the beach is no longer an open grave. It is a fragile foothold, a beachhead, purchased at unimaginable cost. The American soldiers who survived are battered, bloodied, exhausted, but alive. They have taken what was supposed to be impossible. The Germans, despite superior positioning and firepower, begin to realize something terrifying. These Americans do not break. Losses mount, but the assault continues. Orders are given, but fewer and fewer men remain to carry them out. The battle begins to shift not because of genius, not because of planning, but because of determination. And somewhere in the dunes, and hedgerows, Koto Roosevelt, and countless unnamed privates and sergeants continue to inspire men forward. They will not be stopped. The first wave has survived. The first wave has survived against the odds. But Omaha is only the beginning. The real test is just ahead. The beach is a maelstrom. Smoke curls into a gray sky, mingling with a scent of salt, gunpowder, and blood. You can almost feel the trembling of the sand beneath your boots as artillery shells crater the coastline. Everywhere, small pockets of American soldiers fight for survival, isolated and leaderless. Improvising under fire. Corporal Henry Jenkins crawls along the waterline, dragging a wounded comrade, blood soaking his uniform. Above him, tracer rounds slice the sky, and the screams of men echo across the beach. Yet, amid the chaos, tiny acts of courage begin to stitch the fragments of the attack together. General Norman Kotar continues his relentless march along the sand, stopping at each group, assessing, motivating, directing. He spots a machine gun. Nestad has pinned down a squad of Rangers. Without hesitation, he grabs a grenade, tosses it into the bunker, and charges the position. The men behind him follow, instinctively, because he has already shown the path forward. Survival, on this beach, is as much about leadership as it is about firepower. Further west, Captain Quentin Roosevelt lands with the 4th Infantry Division, following in his father's footsteps at Utah Beach. Though miles separate him from the main objective, he adapts instantly, using local cover to coordinate the scattered troops into a cohesive push inland. The father and son pair exemplify a larger truth. D-Day is won not by a single brilliant maneuver, but by countless small decisions made under extreme duress. German defenders, meanwhile, are both lethal and frustrated. Oberleutnant Karl Weber, commanding a machine gun position atop a sand dune, watches the Americans advance despite devastating losses. His ammunition is running low. He calls for reserves, but the chaos of the invasion has disrupted supply lines. Orders are meaningless if there is no one left to execute them. Weber realizes, too late, that sheer courage cannot always be countered with firepower. Amid the smoke, a young private, Eddie Thompson, discovers a knocked-out Sherman tank. Its turret jammed, its engine silent. Using the tank for cover, he rallies a small group of infantrymen. Together, they push through a gap in the obstacles, moving inland 1 yard at a time. Each step is earned through ingenuity and raw nerve. This is the essence of Omaha, a test not of doctrine, but of human will. Naval fire continues to play a crucial role. Destroyers inch closer to the shore, exposing themselves to mines and shallow reefs. Shells from the USS Texas and other vessels target German positions, giving soldiers the breathing room to advance. The sailors know every salvo could mean the difference between life and death for men they will never meet. Amid the carnage, there are moments of surreal contrast. A soldier finds a German helmet lying in the sand, polished, clean, almost ceremonial. The incongruity is jarring. Here is the precision and order of the enemy, set against the chaos, mud, and death surrounding it. Soldiers joke nervously, but there is no laughter, only the adrenaline-fueled need to survive and move forward. By mid-morning, the tide begins to turn. Small groups consolidate positions behind the seawall, exploiting breaches made by Bangalore, torpedoes, and sheer persistence. Where confusion reigned, coordination slowly emerges. Every successful advance feels monumental. Every yard gained a victory carved from impossibility. In the background, the reality of D-Day settles into grim clarity. Casualties are staggering. More than 2,000 men have died or been wounded at Omaha Beach already. Medical teams worked furiously under fire, dragging the injured to makeshift triage stations. The scale of loss is sobering, yet no man hesitates to move forward when ordered or when necessity dictates. The first wave has given way to the second. Fresh troops land into chaos, unsure of the terrain, unsure of the enemy's strength. Panic is an ever-present threat. Some hesitate, some break. But the example set by Koto Roosevelt, and countless others, instills a resilience that spreads across the beach. Leadership is contagious. Courage is infectious. And as the morning advances, the Germans begin to understand the impossible reality. Their defenses, meticulously prepared, are not enough. The Americans are relentless. They are adaptive. They are determined to survive and succeed at any cost. Yet, the battle is far from over. The inland push faces obstacles that are both natural and man-made. bluffs overlooking the beach, minefields, and entrenched machine gun positions. The price paid for the first foothold is only the beginning of the struggle to secure Normandy. Somewhere in the chaos, a single thought pervades every soldier's mind. If they could survive this morning, they could survive anything, but only if they keep moving. The beachhead exists, fragile but real. But the question remains, can it expand fast enough before German reinforcements arrive? The answer will decide the fate of the invasion, and perhaps the war itself. June 6, 1944, 11 o'clock hours. Command posts across Normandy dot inside the cramped, tented command posts behind the beaches. Generals and staff officers are glued to maps, radios, and reports. The air is thick with cigarette smoke and tension. You can almost taste the anxiety, metallic and sharp. Every message is a lifeline or a harbinger of disaster. General Omar Bradley leans over a map, spread across a folding table in the USS Augusta, binoculars dangling from his neck. Reports from Omaha are grim. Pined down units, scattered waves, communication breakdowns. His fingers trace the coast obsessively. Each dot represents a man, a squad, a division teetering on the brink. Evacuation seems logically impossible to ignore, but Bradley knows that withdrawing now would mean catastrophe. In a nearby tent, Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery reviews the British positions at Gold and Sword beaches. His eyes narrow at the reports of Omaha's chaos. The calculated, methodical planning he relied upon seems almost irrelevant in the face of raw American improvisation. Yet even he cannot deny the results. The beachhead has held. Not with elegance, not by doctrine, but through sheer determination. Staff officers move frantically, relaying orders, coordinating naval bombardments, and adjusting landing schedules. Each second matters. Communications lines are stretched thin, and every delay risks disaster. Junior officers relay updates with urgent precision, their voices rising above the hum of generators and the intermittent roar of distant artillery. Back at Omaha, Brigadier General Norman Cotter continues his relentless rounds. He checks every squad, encourages wounded soldiers to keep moving, and personally directs reinforcements toward critical sectors. To the men under his command, he is more than a leader. He is a symbol that survival is possible. Soldiers follow him, not because of rank, but because he has walked where bullets fell. Meanwhile, Rear Admiral Alan Kirk coordinates naval gunfire support. Destroyers inch closer to the beach, risking mines in shallow water. Get on them, men, he radios. Each shell fired into German positions buys precious seconds in yards for the soldiers clawing their way inland. The coordination between land and sea is imperfect, but every bit of support tips the balance in favor of survival. In contrast, German commanders grow increasingly frantic. Oberstleutnant Heinrich Savell, who has been watching the Americans for hours, realizes that their tenacity defies conventional logic. Ammunition dwindles, reserves are scarce, and morale, though initially high, begins to falter under the relentless pressure of fresh waves of American soldiers. Savell knows the hold in the beach is critical, yet the enemy refuses to break. The strain of command is not just physical. It is emotional, moral, and psychological. Decisions are measured in lives. Every order, every hesitation, carries consequences that will ripple across the beach and beyond. Officers at every level wrestle with the same question: how many more? Men must die before success is guaranteed. At Utah Beach, Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr. continues his work, guiding troops inland from the wrong landing point, using his cane for balance and his authority for inspiration. He personally reconnoiters dangerous positions, directing men towards safer routes. Soldiers who had doubted the wisdom of the invasion now follow his every word. His calm in the storm contrasts sharply with the chaos surrounding him, proving leadership can shape the outcome as much as firepower. Meanwhile, on the British beaches, commanders like Montgomery face their own stress. Units advance methodically, clearing villages house by house, fighting back German armor and artillery. The reality is far from the smooth campaign laid out on maps. Soldiers are exhausted, but discipline and training allow progress to continue. Yet, even as the Allied command stabilizes operations, the war remains precarious. Intelligence reports suggest German reinforcements from Cannes and Cherbourg are mobilizing. The beachhead, though established, is vulnerable. The decisions made in the next hours where to push, where to hold, how to coordinate will determine whether the Allies can exploit the initial success or risk collapse under the weight of German counterattacks. Amid the tension, There are flashes of humanity. Staff officers write quick letters to families. Medics share water and bandages. Soldiers exchange words of encouragement, jokes, even prayers. These fleeting moments of connection remind everyone that behind the maps, radios, and strategies are individuals fighting for life, for comrades, for the war's uncertain outcome. By midday, a fragile pattern emerges. Small gains along the coast are consolidated, reserves are deployed effectively, and the chaotic first hours begin to give way to coordinated movements. Yet no one celebrates. Every officer knows that D-Day is far from over. The beachhead is just the beginning, and the real test of leadership and courage is still unfolding inland. The day continues, unrelenting, and somewhere in the smoke and sand a single thought dominates every mind. The battle is won, one man, one decision, and one act of courage at a time.